Hello friend, I want to tell you about the Subaru Impreza car. The Subaru Impreza, although only a compact, has become a legend like a sports car. Because in reality, what we associate with Subaru also refers to sports. Can you imagine the Impreza without four-wheel drive? We can't, but without turbo, absolutely. The Impreza GC debuted in 1992. And its special feature compared to its competitors is permanent four-wheel drive. The boxer engines are also unusual, regardless of capacity and power. Both of these elements create the symmetrical all-wheel drive system, i.e. a symmetrically arranged four-wheel drive system. This is about symmetry in the longitudinal axis of the vehicle. 2 cylinders per side and a completely symmetrical drive, without a side shaft transferring torque to the front. This design of the car gave one advantage over the competition: excellent driving characteristics in all conditions. While on dry asphalt four-wheel drive does not contribute much to the handling itself with good grip, the low center of gravity does. It is worth noting that we are not only talking about the opposed engine, which is lower than traditional inline engines, but also about the additional mass of the drive system, located under the floor. To be precise, if the Impreza did not have four-wheel drive, the center of gravity would be higher. In wet conditions, as well as on snowy roads, Subaru customers of course benefited greatly from the excellent traction provided by the SAWD system. At a time when other manufacturers offered 4x4 drive mainly in unique variants of their models, Subaru had it as standard, and it was the best permanent drive configuration with a central differential at the time. It is worth noting that the drivetrain configurations were different, and the one mentioned was the most common. The center differential is supported, locked, by a viscous clutch. Such a clutch was also installed instead of a differential, but only in versions with an automatic gearbox. This practice has survived to this day. In a sense, this is also permanent four-wheel drive, because the clutch never disengages one of the axles. In the case of the Impreza GC, the split is 80-20. In addition, the station wagon version has a small reduction gear as standard. Thanks to synchronization, it can be engaged while driving. The reduction gear increases the RPM by about 500 to 600. In principle, it shortens the gear ratios, which allows for better dynamics or greater pulling power during normal driving on the road. The car itself is average at best. It offers a not very spacious interior for 2 adults and 2 children or shorter passengers in the back. Even the station wagon version is not particularly practical, although here it should rather be called a hatchback. Interestingly, in some markets, including Australia, this body style was classified as such. No wonder, because the estate's trunk has a volume of 365 liters, the same as the sedan. This is the effect of the rear axle. What's worse, in order to give the Impreza a nicer shape, the designers used a procedure of strongly tilting the rear window, which has an even more negative impact on functionality. The Impreza estate should therefore be treated as a hatchback. You can recognize the GT or turbo body by the hood with an air scoop that goes straight to the intercooler located on top of the engine. There are also additional, smaller holes. In addition, standard, often gold aluminum rims and a more elaborate front bumper with large, additional lights or caps in their place. Also standard equipment were sill covers and various versions of the spoiler, usually a large wing. It is worth adding that on the Japanese and American markets, a 2-door body, also called a coupe, was offered. Engines. Subaru initially installed naturally aspirated opposed engines with capacities from 1.6 to 1.8 liters. They were combined with a 5-speed manual gearbox or a 4-speed automatic. The basic engine, codenamed EJ16, produces from 90 to 98 horsepower, while the 1.8 EJ18 produces slightly more, at 110 horsepower. It was not until 1995 that a 2-liter engine was introduced, generating 115 to 125 horsepower, and a 2.2-liter engine appeared on the American market over time. Of course, the above are complemented by engines that are rather uncommon on our market, with a capacity of 1.4 and 1.5 liters and the most popular, powering the GT Turbo version, the 2.0 turbocharged engine. An interesting fact is the use of a carburetor in the 1.6 engine and single-point fuel injection in the 1.8. The most modern, because it has multi-point injection, is the 2.0 engine, which we recommend. Which engine to choose? Basically, each is good, but only the 2-liter engine gives decent performance, which behaves quite cultured with fuel consumption. Achieving values of 7 to 9 L, 100 kilometers should not be surprising, but rather pleasing. However, if you do not pay attention to fuel, it is also easy to achieve values at the level of 10 to 12 L, 100 kilometers. It is important that the turbocharged engine is based on the same naturally aspirated design, so it is easy to imagine what reserves of strength this unit has. Another thing is that naturally aspirated Imprezas are not tortured and tuned. Of course, we do not discourage smaller engines, although they have worse performance and fuel consumption is not lower at all. If you come across a carburetor version, it is worth taking a close look at the engine's operation, because fewer and fewer companies deal with the regulation and regeneration of such devices. Especially Japanese carburetors, which can be black magic even for experts on the subject. All it takes is for someone to put all the pipes and cables back together after a crash repair, and not in accordance with art, and the engine may never behave properly again. The good news is that it is possible to install a gas system in each of these engines. However, you should be careful with cars with gas already installed, and avoid those whose units work unevenly. This may already be a sign of damaged heads. Remember that Subaru has two. You will find a place for a cylinder, but there is not much of it. Subaru offered a spare wheel, so the toroidal tank must have a small capacity. What's broken? The Subaru Impreza GC is generally an extremely durable and very reliable car. This applies of course to the naturally aspirated versions, which are not subjected to the same loads as the supercharged ones. These are solid Japanese mechanics from the 90s, which nothing touches. However, it is worth knowing that the drive system requires care, i.e. changing the oils in the differentials and gearbox. To extend the life of the multi-plate clutch, 4 identical tires should be used and rotated regularly. Remember that Subaru engines have a timing belt drive, and breaking it will result in a very expensive breakdown. It may not be easy to find a used engine. The timing belt should be replaced along with the accessory drive belt every 100,000 kilometers. The oil should be replaced every 10,000 kilometers and use synthetic. The standard ground clearance allows driving on light off-road terrain. In some markets, even an off-road Impreza Outback was offered. However, it must be remembered that the SAWD drive in the Impreza was created for driving on a flat road, although with different surfaces, and not off-road as is the case in the Forester. So we warn fans of wallowing in mud, who later claim that the Subaru has a poor drive because it got stuck when one of the wheels completely lost traction. The electrics in the Impreza GC are very reliable and durable, because they are not too complicated yet. What is worth noting is that the cars are usually well equipped. Electric windows at the front, mirrors and ABS are the norm, and often with air conditioning. This is the opposite of what European manufacturers were offering at the time. Usually everything works. When buying, you should pay attention to the windows in the doors that do not have frames. They should be adjustable, but not everyone remembers this, so water leaks or air blows during driving do happen. Most often, however, the cause is the car's accident adventures or rotten seals. Corrosion can get everywhere, although it is not a tragedy for this model. Yes, it rusts like every Japanese car, but not too much. The problem is that it is harder to get bodywork parts. It is worth inspecting the car carefully before buying, because it is not very profitable to repair it if the main parts are rotting. The last aspect is the suspension. In the front we have a very simple design with a McPherson strut, in the rear a multi-link axle. Both are durable, but the costs of replacing the components vary. For example, the shock absorber is easily available, but not very cheap for such an old car. The lower wishbone made of aluminum is scary in terms of cost, but the manufacturers of replacements have taken care of a steel element that can be fully regenerated. Unfortunately, it won't be easy with the rear. Rubbers that can be replaced can be bought, but whole wishbones can only be bought at an authorized service center. Is it worth it? Let's start by answering the question. Why are we describing this model at all? There's nothing extraordinary about it, but few people write about it. Meanwhile, the car is usually bought by laymen in terms of technology. They simply come across a bargain, and with four-wheel drive, so it's worth taking. The second group are people who simply need four-wheel drive in anything. That's exactly how you should treat the naturally aspirated Impreza, as an alternative to other compacts for a few $100s. Because the car has only two advantages, although they are big ones: four-wheel drive and, above all, great durability. The rest is not worth much, but if you do not have high requirements regarding space, appearance or fuel consumption, then it is still one of the more interesting cars in its age group and segment, and it will cope in really difficult road conditions. In our opinion, this is a proposition mainly for people who care about good grip, i.e. residents of the south of the country. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.
I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, you no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you, on the website carme.pro. Here you can find out everything about the car, what brakes and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with, and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on carme.pro.